Sounds great. Okay. I'm assuming that you can hear us. So, terrific. So, I was on a couple of hours ago. I had the honor and the privilege to interview one of my heroes named Stephen Newcomb, who is one of the leading indigenous legal scholars in North America. And now it is my honor and full and probably less stressful enjoyment to be hanging out with and in conversation with my coworker in Community Rights US and the president of our board of directors, Bryan Lewis. We're both in Portland. We both live in Portland. We're not in the same location tonight. We're both at home. But I just wanted to welcome you, Bryan. Bryan has been driving FedEx delivery all day until just an hour or two ago, so it's great that he's willing to even show up at this late hour for an hour and talk with me about Community Rights US stuff. He is one of my favorite colleagues in Community Rights US, and welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, buddy. But before I say anything, I just want to thank all of the people who have worked so hard to help us put on this marathon, volunteering your time, helping to bring attention to the cause, and just putting your skills to use. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the folks that are watching right now, and every little bit helps. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
We've got a message that says you're on they're hearing you on echo. Let's see. Oh, I know why. I'm probably on echo too. I need to turn the sound off on the Zoom. I need to mute. No, that's not right. I need to do it on. Give me a minute, y'all. I'm on such a learning curve here. I need to mute us on. I'm on such a learning curve. We were muted. We were muted on Twitch already. Techie friends, we're muted on Twitch. Are you still hearing an echo? There's a delay with people responding, so. So Bryan, let's start by. Okay, Bryan, will you talk so I can hear if there's an echo? Says our techie.
I can certainly try.
Keep going. There's no echo on me, but there is on you, according to our tech people. So keep talking.
Funny things that I call Paul in private.
Uh-oh.
If we're keeping it safe, we'll just say I often talk about his beard and how fuzzy he is. I'm inclined to go further, but I really enjoy our professional relationship. I don't want to put that in jeopardy.
Okay, so there's still an echo on you. I don't know if you've ever played with my beard, but you're certainly welcome to. Okay, it's not bad. Keep going till I try to figure out what this. Okay, so they're trying to figure it out. We're going to continue. So Bryan, I know that you and I have worked really hard on imagining how much power this body, this governing body that was recently created in Portland has, called the City of Portland Home Rule Charter Commission, which the bylaws of the City of Portland state that once every decade for a 2-year period, the city nominates a whole bunch of local residents to sit on this Home Rule Charter Commission and to propose amendments to the Home Rule Charter. Home Rule Charters are kind of like a mini constitution for a city government. And Bryan had an opportunity to be one of the Charter Commission members, and is now on it. And he and I have worked really hard to try to figure out how to make this commission do some really cool stuff. And why don't you talk a little bit about your role as a Home Rule Charter Commissioner in Portland, what a Home Rule Charter is, And you're very welcome and allowed to share your frustration with the current situation if you so desire.
Whoa, whoa. That's a very interesting tee up that you gave me. I appreciate that. Yeah, so as you said, a home rule charter is essentially the constitution for the municipality, and it stipulates uh, what the institutions, the bureaus, the agencies are, their powers, the powers of the various elected officials, um, how and how virtually everything is supposed to be oriented and run. And some of our conversations in getting this process up and running are really minute, and they're in the weeds, and they're really interesting, talking about things like the other day we had the pleasure of speaking with Commissioner Ryan, who is on the city council. And he was talking about the lengths that the city has had to go to in order to change permitting, right? And the various issues that folks who are in construction and all sorts of organizations have to go through that. And then other conversations are about really high level things that really do have to do with governance and how accountable government is to the people. So things like districts. Right now, every single city council person is elected at large by the whole city, and there's a great effort for folks to push it so that each council person is represented by a specific district, and so many things, and that's really great. At the moment, a lot of our efforts are establishing the body, establishing our rules and our inner processes, and we're getting to know each other and get a sense of what the next 2 years could look like. And one of the things that I'm really happy to work with Paul and a lot of different folks and organizations from all over the city is develop all sorts of ways to assist in having a really robust and engaging um, outreach program so that all of the brilliance, all the genius, all of the concerns and interests of the community are actually teased out and embraced so that this isn't just a process that is so fairly common and folks get to decide behind the scenes what could or should happen, and then the public only hears about it later and gets to vote on whether or not this or that thing that was predetermined gets decided. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, for me, this is another effort of building democracy and empowering and emboldening people, and really trying to push the limit for what self-governance really can look like. One of the reasons why I'm so happy to work with Paul and be a part of the community rights movement is because we're a pro-democracy movement, right? We are about ensuring that the cause of democracy manifests itself at every level of government, in particular local governments. Where it has some of its most robust power, but often it does not get utilized. And so this is an amazing opportunity to work with folks from across the city uh, and make that happen. So I'm really excited.
And it's interesting because that's a really good description. Thank you. I think both of us, I mean, you way more than me because you're an actual Portland native, and I've only been here about a decade. Oh, and by the way, Bryan, if you can tweak your screen so that the top of your head isn't cut off on the picture, can you move the computer just slightly? So better. So you, both because you're a Portland native and you've watched some really horrible politics happening in Portland, and also because you're a black man in a very racist city, you probably have more you probably naturally have more sense of pessimism than do I or did I about the Portland City Council, which loves to appear truly progressive and activist. And we've had many mayors who'd love to be seen as progressive and activist just in the last 15 or 20 years. And you've been aware of a lot more mayors than that. And yet, here we are. The Home Rule Charter Commission started officially in November of last year. So it's now gone almost 1/4 of its entire 2-year period before it automatically disbands. And yet, the experience that it appears watching you from the outside and watch the commission's work from the outside, it surely appears as if the city really doesn't want this commission to meet much, do much, challenge existing powers much. Can you talk about that? And if I'm wrong, disagree with me.
I think I'm gonna disagree with you just a little bit, a little bit.
Good.
Um, so yes, Paul is right. I do weigh a lot more than him, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago.
Of
I'd
course,
have
you're
to,
like 6 inches taller than Paul,
right,
or so.
right, right. And so
And you're
I'd
a
have to lose.
weightlifter. I mean, let's
Yeah,
put all of
I'd
the
have to.
details in place here, dude.
Let's give it proper context. I
Okay.
would, yeah, I'd have to lose 50 pounds to be Paul's weight. Yes, yes.
Oh, more.
So when you say that, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Um, I mean, so this particular commission, this iteration of it, has a lot of resources that past ones did not, and a lot of different folks at the city, including councilperson Hardesty, Joanne Hardesty, went to bat to make sure that we had those resources, including actual funding for this effort, that we would have staff people, not just volunteers, not just people helping out, essentially us doing it on our own. And we're volunteers too, the 20 of us, the 20 commissioners who are part of this endeavor. We've got full-time staff people. I mean, there's a lot of resources that are at hand that will make that should and hopefully will make this a very different process than what's happened in the past. And in every conversation that I've had with an elected official or an individual from the city has been very thoughtful in that they want to be supportive. They have their own specific ideas. They are somewhat defined by their own experience. And the issues that they have day to day as elected officials, being responsible for so many things, including a lot of bureaus and agencies, because that's one of the ways that the city of Portland works, is that each and every single council person has a bureau that they're in charge of day to day. But I can feel in each and every one of our conversations that they want to be supportive, that they want to help empower us, and they're trying to have a light touch. They're not trying to push us in this direction or that direction. And I'm appreciative of that. So in various ways, I feel like we're set up to have a lot of potential. The question is whether or not we realize it. And the union organizer in me, because that's one of the things that I did in the past as a union activist, and later on as a new organizer, helping other workers get into the union, develop their own union. The union organizer in me says, ultimately, what are people willing to fight for? Right? I mean, I have a lot of different policy goals for the city, things that I think would help, but I would be willing to forego pretty much each and every one of those things if we can develop a truly robust, engaging process that reaches every single Portlander and fundamentally improves our democracy. Ideally, it's something that's even healing for our community, given everything that's gone on over the last couple of years. Um, but ultimately, it comes down to what are we willing to fight for? If you're willing to struggle for a higher minimum wage or empowering workers or uh, any number of things, you can get it. But you got to put in the work, because the people that have interest in keeping the status quo, they are not they're not going to keep it easy. They're going to make it easy for us. So let's put our backs into it.
So why don't you then, let's get more real in terms of what the group not just could achieve, the commission could achieve, but what it actually already you believe is achieving, or what kinds of specific charter amendments are already up for discussion that look like they may actually pass a vote of the Charter Commission. Like where is it at, and maybe also you and I and your colleagues in the community have created quite a brainstorm of the things we'd love to see put in the Charter Commission list of amendments. Are any of those in discussion yet?
I mean, they've been a part of private conversations. A lot of folks have a great deal of aspirations for what this can be, but if we're talking brass tacks, no, there haven't been any specific conversations about what we will do. We're still establishing the bylaws and the rules for the
Wow.
organization. Yeah, and it's a really important process, because we're literally revising the Constitution for the city, right? This is not something that should be haphazard.
Okay.
It's going to be in place for 10 years, right? I want to make sure that we set up a good process, because hopefully, ideally, it will lead to better outcomes. But yes, to answer your question, we're still developing the bylaws. Yes.
Your biggest hopes for the commission's work, your biggest concerns, and we'll move on to other topics.
Biggest hopes. My biggest hope is that whatever it is that we accomplish, that ultimately what it means is that the day-to-day life of every single person in this city is defined not by the drudgery or work or the consumption of something that's dressing itself up as culture and the partaking thereof, but that the citizens, the people of this city, have the feel their power, feel what it is, what it means to govern and to make law and to be engaged in the process of self-governance, right? And so that means things like having real power over the budget of the city, real changes around ordinances and ballot initiatives, and essentially just us engaged in lawmaking and having the power individually of it, right? Feeling emboldened and making this city what it can and what it should be. That's my hope, ultimately. And a lot of that is not going to be exactly what I want, but democracy is messy, and that's one of the things that's great about it. It's exciting. It keeps you on your toes.
And biggest concerns or fears?
That's one of the, that's one of the things that I love about Paul is he is very direct at times.
Pushy?
I mean, that he phrases things differently than I'd phrase them. For example, I think simply put, my biggest fear is that we're not going to do anything, and that things are going to remain exactly the same, um, uh, yeah, that an opportunity to actually strengthen um, strengthen what it means to be a citizen, what it means to be a part of this experiment, um, isn't furthered and can't be furthered, even when a process um, is seemingly right at your fingertips to actually make meaningful change. Um, because I mean, what is so much of our news engulfed in? It's engulfed in the pain and the suffering of our fellow citizens that have great harm done to them and that endure extraordinary amounts of quiet and desperate suffering, and they have no recourse, none. Um, and that we live lives defined by our powerlessness. Um,
Yeah,
and that's only going to get further entrenched.
well said.
That's my fear. That's my fear.
So I've decided to add a bonus question and
Okay.
put you on the spot because I just thought of something else I wanted to ask you that's related to this. Um, yeah, you can answer it as short or long as you want. Um, and then you can ask me anything you want. Um, anything. Let's see. Except things that are obscene because we're live on Twitch and there's rules. Um,
I mean, how do you define obscene, really? It's
you have the basic understanding. Um,
like,
what is Bryan Lewis's
I don't know.
personal, big, bold vision of Portland, Oregon by the time Bryan is becoming an old man in 30 or 40 years, where Bryan's probably still going to be living in Portland? Um, if, of course, if the climate hasn't completely collapsed and we've all died. Um, sorry. Um, a truly democratically governed city, your vision, a racially just city. What does it look like? How would we get there? Just in, yeah, I mean, just give me a bit of a rap about like spontaneously. How do you think we get there, and how does it look when we get there in 30 or 40 years? If we can pull this off.
I Jesus. I'm getting a flashback to an interview Foucault did where he was asked a similar question, but it was specifically about like what does what does communism, like the true state of communism, look like? And he said, I mean, he didn't say it simply. It was long and it was poetic, and but I mean basically explain like it's impossible to know. It's like it requires generations of struggle and tools that haven't yet been invented. It's literally on the other side of centuries of struggle. Um, it's the realizing of all the things that are hard to even articulate. But maybe that's if I'm going back to your question. Um, I'm going back to your question. Then I would say, yeah. I mean, I want all the buzzwords, right? I want all the things that I want racial justice. I want economic justice. I want equity. I want all the things that make up the skeleton of uh, the organizing that we try and do. Not us as community rights, but like the left and moderates in general. right? I want. Yeah, that is a tough question. I get.
And how does democratic governance help to get us there? Because you keep talking about that as well, and that's what the Charter Commission is about. Is like you're there to try to create much more democratic governance structures for the future of Portland, like way fewer barriers for running a ballot initiative that the citizens want to vote on. Is just one
Right.
example.
I mean, I guess the truth is that the harder truth that I have a hard time being honest about is, I mean, I don't. Portland is not racist, right? It's not. You can't. I'm not going to talk about my city in that fashion. I think there's a lot of hard things that are going on there. I mean, Paul and I are friends, and we talk all the time. Sometimes really late into the night on his front porch, drinking tea, and usually eating Thai food. Um, and I had to explain to him that, you know, um, a number of years ago, I stopped commuting by bike, right, and that's how I got around. That's how I got to work, how I got to school, how I, you know, went to house parties. Um, and the reason why I really stopped wasn't because it just didn't fit in my lifestyle anymore, but because I was tired of people hitting me with their cars and driving off yelling the N word. Um, I was tired of, uh, yeah, I was tired of waking up on the concrete, um, and so many other things.
And this white boy was shocked when you first told me that, for some strange reason.
Um, Portland has problems like every place. But in the same way that I don't give up on anybody, I don't give up on this city, or its people. I'm resolved to do what I can to help us realize something better. But I think, if I'm being honest, um, I usually go towards the political because I don't exactly want to hope for what race relations may look like. Um, because I'm afraid I will be greatly disappointed. Um, so it's a lot easier for me to just think about governance and direct democracy and so many other things. Um, in part because it's it's a lot easier to organize around things that are not racialized or, focused on gender, but, if we centralize our organizing on things that benefit the group, that benefit, large numbers of people, um, then yeah, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Well, and I know one thing that I'm really hopeful about, and I'm assuming you are as well, is that for the very first time in Portland history, the Home Rule Charter Commission of 20 people is filled with people of color. It's filled with um, low income people. It's geographically representative for the first time. These are all firsts, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is far and away the most diverse, commission that's ever been in the city's history. Um, they're representative of pretty much every single facet of what the city has to offer, and each person is truly embedded, um, in community and has a long history of supporting this city.
So that's a very hopeful
Right. So
aspect right
yeah. I
there.
mean, I'm a
Yeah.
servant of hope. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. As hard as it can be, I am a servant of hope, even when I don't feel like it. You know, it's like, It's like working out or anything else. You just do it. You just do it. Just do it. And the benefits will come. I want to check in and see if I actually answer. I don't think I answered your question. I think with my honest answer, I think part of my great, usually unarticulated desire is direct democracy.
So people are passing laws through popular votes. Is that what you mean by that?
That a number of other things. Yeah.
Democratic law, budgeting, whatever. What is that phrase? The movement for that? It's not democratic budgeting.
I mean, that gets at it. Gets at it. Yeah. I mean, essentially that our tax dollar, amongst so many other things, that our tax dollars are attributed, designated, and spent by us, not by ivory tower folks that believe they know best.
Right. The business elite, as in most cities,
and so forth and so on. Right. I mean, for me, ultimately, everything comes back to what we've been talking about, which is putting hands or taking power out of the hands of the few and putting into the hands of the many. And there is nothing that will suffice that. There is no substitute for that.
Right on.
Yeah.
Community Rights US board member Carla Cow has just asked a question. What's the most radical idea that has been brought up by you or someone else in the Home Rule Charter Commission since you joined?
I get a very specific thing comes to mind. I know exactly what it is. I don't know that I'm allowed to say it, quite honestly. I think I might actually be betraying someone's trust if I were to say it. But I can assure you that a lot of people, it'll be controversial. I can guarantee you that.
Can you say it generically without breaking confidentiality agreements?
We'll just say it would enfranchise more people. More people will be enfranchised. It's
generic.
Yeah. It's very generic.
Okay.
That, amongst other things, will most certainly put us. It's gonna trigger crisis of jurisdiction and state preemption, and I'm really, I'm excited to see what happens with that.
And there is substantial support for this radical thing in the group? Or there could be?
Amongst a coalition of people in the community, yes. Yeah.
Right on.
I mean, that's one of the great things is that there are lots of organizations, there are lots of coalitions that are coming together that are settling various kinds of personal and historical differences and are really trying to focus on doing the hard organizing necessary. And it's just, for me, it's a deeply exciting time. And I got nothing but hope.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, I would say that anything that the Home Rule Charters Commission is doing that would challenge corporate rule or corporate rights or state or federal preemption standards, all of those would be kind of revolutionary on their face.
They would be. They would be. They would be. And one of the things that Paul and I have talked about and will continue to be talking about for quite some time is
spit it out, buddy.
What the CR movement looks like in the state of Oregon, and bringing folks together um, and having as robust a movement as possible here, because there's been extraordinary amounts of interest and desire on a whole host of issues, um, but actually igniting something and seeing it through. Right, that'll be the thing.
Right on. Okay, we're gonna take a 2-minute break, and I'm gonna play the Community Rights US ad. We have a grand total of 5 people watching. It's a massive audience. I want to compare that to
Every one of you matter.
Grand
Every one of you matter.
Theft Auto something something, which is currently playing live on Twitch and has 136,000 people watching. Minecraft has 12,000 people watching. Call of Duty Warzone has 16,500 people watching. But we have 6 people watching, just became 6, and they're the right 6. And so for the 2 or 3 of those people who are not Community Rights US staff or board, we want to ask you at this late hour to make a donation of any size. And believe it or not, if you want to donate $1 or $2 or $5 at this moment to support our pretty extraordinary and unique work, that really does make a difference. Don't feel like it doesn't. I'm going to play the ad, and you can scroll down, whoever's watching, on the Twitch page, and you'll see click here to donate, and you can donate any amount you want. We're going to just play the ad briefly. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. If I can just find it. There we go.
Did you know it's illegal for local governments to pass laws that protect their communities from controversial corporate activities like oil pipelines, genetically modified crops, fracking, and clear-cut logging?
Did you know that corporations have more constitutionally protected rights than people do?
Enter the community rights movement.
Since 1999, 200 towns, cities, and counties in 9 states have passed locally enforceable laws that ban specific harmful corporate activities and put decision-making back in the hands of local people.
We want to bring this incredibly successful community-based strategy to every community in this country.
We've assembled an amazing network of people and organizations to provide communities with the support and training that they need to run successful community rights campaigns.
Our work transcends conventional single-issue activism. We think of it as a rights-based strategy, which allows progressives and conservatives to have a much easier time coming together to protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents and the local environment. Community rights lawmaking can protect our right to clean water and safe food, our right to free and fair elections, our right to living wage jobs, and our right to a renewable energy future.
But this movement is about more than just reclaiming our local lawmaking. It is also about catalyzing a profound culture shift.
Imagine the possibilities in your community if more and more of your neighbors and coworkers could envision themselves as taking an active role in the governance of their own communities.
We are, in fact, we the people. That is where our ultimate power and authority resides.
Your contribution will greatly expand the reach of the community rights movement.
Thank you for your support and for sharing our fundraising campaign with others. Very good. I'm back with Bryan Lewis, who's the president of the board of our organization, Community Rights US, and a very dear friend of mine here in Portland, Oregon. And Bryan, it's your turn. What would you like to know about me, community rights work, and how I might answer those questions? You're on, dude.
I mean, I've got a pretty good sense of it, I think, but I guess I'm curious, like, who in particular, who would you say helped to shape your understanding of organizing, of what it means to do organizing?
Hmm. That's a wonderful question. I don't think I've ever been asked it, and I know that I'm a self-taught organizer, which causes some clumsiness. Um,
No,
I used to
no.
fantasize going to the Midwest Academy's multi-month course. This is, of course, 10 or 20 years before there was email and computers, personal computers. So you physically went somewhere for a while. Um, and I'm a very slow reader, so there were organizing books like Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals that you mentioned earlier that I've owned a copy since college, and it's a tiny little book, and I haven't read a damn word in that book. It's still on the shelf after 40 years. Um, so that's kind of disappointing. So when I think about me and organizing, I've called myself a grassroots community organizer for a very long time. And my first community organizing work was around war tax resistance in my college days at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. I was, um, amusingly, I was kind of proud of this. I was considered one of the most infamous political activists in the student body during some of the time that I was there. I was there for 5 years, from 76 to 81. And I had a lot of fun at a very radical activist public college doing political work. Um, and I organized a lot of war tax resistance among the student body. And then I learned how to lead nonviolent direct action workshops for those who were going to do civil disobedience in a large scale action at the Trident nuclear submarine base west of Seattle, in what was being called something summer. I've just Trident summer. That's not quite it. Anyway, it was a couple months of large scale civil disobedience, and I led probably a couple dozen nonviolent direct action workshops that were both theory and practice, but also kind of physically practicing how you respond when a cop grabs you and you're shot and you're surprised. And do you go passively or do you get dragged? And, getting used to having handcuffs and getting used to being treated roughly, and, how to make decisions in an affinity group really, really fast, because we did an arrest where there were 300 or 400 people jumped the nuclear submarine base fence all in a matter of a few hours. And they had to deal with an awful lot of people. They had to process hundreds of us, and we had done this action by affinity group, and we'd practiced decision making by affinity group. And so they put us all in a gymnasium, a very hot, virtually airless gymnasium on the military base, and they were processing us, but they also were trying to pull the people who they thought were the leaders or who had second and third offenses doing direct action. They were trying to pull them out of the crowd, and I still remember 300 or 400 of us using what we had practiced, which is, can we make a decision about how we're going to allow or whether we're going to allow the cops to do this in like 10 minutes flat? Are we going to let these people out of our group so that they're targeted? And 300 or 400 of us made a decision all together in about 8 minutes because we had learned how to do that. And that was one of my really early experiences. I didn't do any specific organizing yet in that campaign, but I did a lot of workshop orientation work. But maybe my very first organizing on college was I organized a general strike of the college cafeteria. I think in my second year. I think I've told you this, haven't I?
Yeah, and I love it.
And
Love it.
and there was a whole group of us who were doing it, but it was my idea, and we did. We shut down the cafeteria for about 2 weeks. Hardly anyone went in there for a meal for 2 weeks, and we had the vice president of this multinational corporation that was based in Ontario, Canada, if I remember correctly, flew to Seattle, drove down to Olympia, and stood there in front of me and begged me to call off the strike. And I was like 19 years old. What do you want? what do we need to do for you to call off the strike? And I just remember thinking, oh, this is the impact of community organizing, and wow, are we powerful, right? So it's one of the really seminal early organizing experiences that I had, of learning how much power a small group can have. Of course, it's a college campus, and it's at a campus of more radical students. It's an unusual public college, but still, yeah. Did I answer the question? I don't know. I don't know if I did.
Yeah,
those are some of my early organizing stories. Yeah, and I think I was hooked after that. I pretty much for the rest of my life, I've been doing odd jobs around the edges so that I can pay my rent and focus on my social change work. And I've learned to lead many workshops. I've created some workshops like Active Listening for Activists, which is a full-day workshop, which almost no activists have ever asked me to lead. And because we're not really that interested in active listening as an activist culture. Yeah. But I've ended up focusing on my social change work as my life work. And, I tried to work 2 or 3 days a week at some job somewhere so that I could do the focus I want. That's been my life for about 40 years.
I mean, I don't think I know what that moment was that you decided, oh, I'm dedicating my life to this. Was it a specific moment or an event, or is it something that was just sort of ethereal, or?
I think it happened slowly. I mean, I left college with an incredibly good paying job. I was driving city bus in Olympia, Washington, straight out of college, and making $14 an hour as my starting pay in 1981.
And we figured out what that was at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an enormous salary today.
Today it'd be big.
And I was on 40. They worked their new drivers to see who they could break and fire 49 hours a week on 6-day-a-week split shifts. And I did that for 4 months, and I knew the entire time that I was going to quit after 4 months and join an international peace walk across the world, but they didn't. And they fired me just before the end of the 4 months for some interesting reasons. But I made a lot of money in those 4 months, way more than I knew what to do with. Yeah. So even then, I was like, yeah. I mean, most people would go, oh my God, I'm set for life. I have a really good paying job. If I'm good for 4 months, I'm union protected. I'll get, the roots and the hours that I want sooner or later. I'll get a pension. This is it. And I'm 23 years old, and I'm planning to quit in 4 months and walk across Europe. So yeah, I was already like, these are my priorities. I'm a social movement person. I decided not to have children in my 20s because I wanted to be as powerful a social movement person as I could be, and didn't want to be a lousy dad. We have a couple of interesting questions. Let's see here. Carla says, you're too genuine for any type of cookie cutter, Paul. Okay. And Carla says, ooh, I'd like $14 an hour. Haha. And Tyler says, is there an effective way to get people involved in activism who might feel that it's hopeless to do so, those who don't believe that it will bring about real change? That's really a great question. What's interesting about the community rights movement, I've been doing this work for 2.5 decades, involved in the community rights movement now. And Evelina, sorry, not Tyler. Evelina asked that question, who is one of our wonderful active volunteers who got us into Twitch in the first place and convinced us to do this fascinating marathon. Thank you, Evelina.
Thank you.
I think what I found in my 2+ decades as a leader in the community rights movement is that if you are already involved in some kind of activism involving corporate power, usually single issue activism, it's going to be very difficult for you to unhook yourself from that conventional one corporate harm at a time single issue activism to get involved in our movement, because as it turns out, you have an awful lot to unlearn for our movement to make any sense. And unlearning can be really hard for some people. And there's also an ego attachment that for some people can be really challenging, especially if you're the longtime leader of a local or regional group, and you have ego attachment to the strategies and tactics of your organization, or you're very directly attached to the foundation funding of your organization. And so what we found, what I have discovered over my 2.5 decades doing this work, is that it's people who care deeply about, or who are concerned deeply about something going on in the world, but are not hooked already in conventional single issue activism around a corporate harm. Those are the people most likely to be attracted to our work and to understand our work and to dive right in, because they don't have anything to unlearn. And in fact, a lot of those people, in my experience, are the ones who are already the most skeptical about the United States being a functioning democracy, or they're already, which the single issue activists are not, or they wouldn't be doing the tactics and strategies they're doing, or they're people who have attempted to write a letter to their congressperson, or they've gone to a regulatory hearing, or they've gone to city council meetings, and their experience has consistently been, no one cares what I think. And they're just basically telling us what we want to hear and then going on and doing whatever they're going to do anyway. And I've always believed that people who have that direct personal experience rationally unplug after a while. I confront people in workshops. Every time I lead one, people are constantly, in the workshops, are constantly making claims that those people out there, those Americans, are apathetic. And I'm like, no, they're not apathetic. They rationally disconnected after trying their damnedest to respond in the way that they were taught to respond, to write the letter, to go to a hearing, whatever. They got basically a screw you response, in nice, friendly words. And, we don't really care what you think. And they disconnected from their involvement as a citizen completely rationally, because they have better things to do with their limited time as someone who's like a single parent, or who's having to work 2 jobs, or who has, an elder who's, an elderly person in the family they're taking care of on the side. Or, we have disgraceful labor policy in the United States, and the system's really designed to tie us up so that we don't have any free time at the end of our income day to do something as a citizen. And so I don't look at any of that as apathy. I look at it as rationally disconnecting and taking care of your personal life, because that seems to be the only place where you have any power or control. And I'm a pretty rare person in the activist community with those beliefs. Almost everyone I know thinks the average American is apathetic, and shame on them. I just don't have that attitude. So yeah, that's who I tend to go after, is people who have either, given up after doing some very basic individual activism because they care about something or other, or people who've never been involved in conventional activist organizations. Those are, to me, the people we target for getting involved in our movement. I'm also asked, what keeps you hopeful, and do you ever completely lose hope? Well, that's kind of an explosive question at this point because, as Bryan, I think, knows, I've lost a lot of hope in the last handful of years, and I'm struggling more than ever. I have been very hopeful for 30 or 40 years of social movement work, and that is no longer true. So what really mostly is keeping me hopeful is being in deep community as much as possible, and staying in love with the natural world, the ecosystems that are hanging in there as I watch things collapse all around me. So, yeah, and Carl is responding, yeah, I'm the explosive type too. So I think that's why Carl and I have become such good friends as well over this last few years, because we share that
There's other things
heartbreak.
too.
Yeah, so feel free to confront me on this, Bryan, or whatever you want to say. Your turn.
I mean, I don't have a choice but to be hopeful, first of all.
Why?
Because otherwise I might just give up, or otherwise I would just give up, right? I love surfing, so I could just go do that, right? It would be
surfing.
Yeah, just go to the beach and surf.
I didn't know you surfed.
Yeah, forget organizing.
You surf?
Yeah, forget. I've only been doing it for maybe 7-something months or so. I've wanted to do it for a long
Good for
time.
you.
But yeah, it's great. You know, I love Ladytron and video games. Right? It'd be real easy to just let that be my free time off, but like, you know, there's I'm too aware of all the desire on the part of so many people, and that if they're just given the tools or the encouragement or the support, a means to actually engage in a fight, they fight. They stand up and they fight. Right? There were parts of being a union organizer that I was not in love with. But every single day I got to get up and help people realize their own power. And sometimes it wasn't in improving their own pay or scheduling or any of the normal stuff. It was about helping somebody else, right? Sharing stories, knowing the pain of a coworker or someone in the community, and standing up for them, for somebody else.
That's one of the things I truly love about you.
There's too much potential. There's too much we can gain. The world is a beautiful place, and it will continue to be, and we're going to ensure it.
Do you think I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm curious what yours is. Do you think the privilege of my skin color as opposed to yours gives me an easier out around feeling hopeless as opposed to pushing back against it?
I'm going to reluctantly say yes, quite possibly. I can't say for certain. One of the things that's funny to me about Paul and I's personal dynamic is that he often asks me very reasonable, very, very cautious, very loving questions about race. And and I don't always know how to respond.
I can't stop thinking about them, about these issues. Yeah, I think about them all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so I mean, okay, so like, quite possibly yes. I mean, when I think about why I bother, I'm usually thinking about my dad or my grandmother or any number of folks who have had to deal with something that quite possibly was racialized violence or discrimination or any number of things, in maybe in some real way, maybe in some marginal way. Um, but uh, that isn't sustaining in in the everyday, right? It's an emotional thing, but at some point, logic for me, logic overrides, and I'm in this. I'm in this with you. I'm in this with this organization, with various movements, with a whole lot because uh, I have a lot of love. I think it comes back to love,
Yeah, you do.
right? Um, I don't know a better, I don't know a better way of helping someone else than helping them realize their worth and having love for themselves, right? And so, as as odd as it was at times, one of the ways that I knew I was doing my job um, was when a working class woman realized one day that all the stuff that we had been training regarding union organizing or environmental organizing or whatever it is, that all the stuff that we had been talking about, rehearsing, she applied to her personal life, right? Her personal life.
Right on.
And I'm not going to take this nonsense, this abuse, this ridicule, this disrespect anymore, right? And she threw her lazy, good for nothing boyfriend or husband or whatnot out on his ass, right? And she cleaned up her life and embraced her worth. I don't necessarily want to be a part of someone getting divorced, but I do want people to be empowered. I want people to take control of their lives and create something better for themselves, right? That's what we're in the business of doing, right? Of emboldening, empowering people to make their lives and their communities better through love, through compassion, and sometimes other things.
Hmm.
But it's great,
Hmm.
and I'm really glad I get to do it with you. I I'm really glad I get to do it with you and all these other folks.
Hmm.
So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Oh, yeah.
For being your silly self.
I love working with you, Bryan.
Oh, I
Um,
like it.
and we've got an old friend of mine who joined us in the last 15 minutes, I think, Fernanda, who is recently moved to Hawaii,
What?
who chimed in. Things are getting real here. I appreciate that. And Fernanda, if you want to ask a question of one of us, feel
Yeah.
free and or make a comment. And Fernanda is going to be presenting tomorrow in our. How can I not be seeing her name? That makes no sense. There she is, 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time, where evolution meets social change, a poetry hour with Fernanda Ibarra. And she listed some of the poets she's going to be reading, and oh my God, am I excited. So everybody who's listening, tune in 1 to 2 p.m. tomorrow Pacific time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I can't wait.
Yeah. Carlos says, yeah, we can't underestimate empowerment at any level, micro and macro. Agreed. Yep. Fernanda says, yeah, I'm having so much fun tuning in with poetry and music and videos from Maui. Right on.
I think I just got jealous a little bit.
Can't wait to see your face again, Fernanda. It's been too long. What else would you like to say or ask, Mr. Bryan Lewis, President of the Board of Community Rights US, and dear friend?
So when you're manicuring your beard, what tools are you using?
The manicuring of my beard that takes place occasionally, of course this is a joke from the beginning to the end of that question, is a wonderful female Vietnamese hairdresser who every so often, when it's out of control, either it or the thing above it on the top, needs to be whacked. That's whacked with a WH, and she does a very competent job at a price that I appreciate. And yeah, interestingly enough, she's married to a Oaxacan man. So yeah, she speaks 3 languages fluently, and we occasionally talk about Mexico.
They can put to shame all of a sudden.
So yeah. One of our tech people says, love Bryan's questions. Yeah, I always do too. Bryan, have you ever touched my beard or played with my beard?
There's something so kind and innocent about that question. And I'm trying to hang on to the innocence of that question. No, I don't think I am.
By the way, whoever's listening, this is the real Bryan. We're now witnessing Bryan Lewis at his lovable best. He has a laugh that I will never forget, and that I truly love. And so there you go. Yeah, it's too bad there aren't 6,000 people listening, because they'd be enjoying this. But the 8 of us who are here are enjoying it just as much.
That's right. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
I mean, would you be opposed to playing Grand Theft Auto while talking about community rights, or would like the unspeakable violence get?
It's a great question.
Get in the way.
I've never played a video game once, not once.
Jesus.
I have. I have watched.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. I've watched people play it maybe a few times, and I've watched men sexually assaulting women on the street. I've watched men run women over in their hot rod cars.
In the reality of the game, he means.
In the game. In game. Isn't that what you're talking about? The game. The video game.
I just want to specify who might be watching that
don't
you not
want
just witness
to
crime and not report.
Watch any of that. I just assume you're talking about Grand Theft Auto is a video game. That's what you're talking about, right?
I in this particular moment am talking about a video game, yes. I just wanted to let anybody and everyone who might...
no, those things I described were in the video. I've watched over people's shoulders about... I mean, you can sexually assault a woman in a video game? Are you serious?
So
no, I'm not at all interested in that while talking community rights or while not talking community rights. No thanks.
Okay, fair enough.
Interesting question, though.
But just so we're all on the same page, are you telling me that you've never played Pong?
Correct.
Pac-Man?
Correct.
None of it.
No.
Ever.
I've watched people play.
Jesus.
I've barely ever played pinball. I've probably played pinball 10 times in my life when pinball was still a thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's little things like this that remind me there's always something to learn about everybody.
Evelina says, "Oh, now that would be some good content for a stream. Paul playing video games.
For the first time.
There are better video games out there, Paul," she says.
Yeah, I mean there yeah. There are video games where you like make clouds in the sky.
Make clouds. Asteroids,
so
says Fernanda. Is that a video game? Asteroids?
Yes.
It is? Oh, well, maybe Fernanda knows me well enough that might just be a good example of a game I should learn and play it with Bryan live on Twitch while talking about community rights, except there's one serious problem, which is that I do not multitask very well. So I probably literally could not do these things at the same time. Which would be a little boring for the crowd.
I feel like I set you up for failure because
yes,
I have ample evidence to that effect. So
Evelina goes on, maybe you should try Democracy 3. That may be your cup of tea. I've never heard of that either, but if Evelina has, bless her heart, spent almost 6 hours with me on Zoom, taking control of my laptop over 2 long 3-hour meetings to help me be ready for doing interviews on Twitch. So we spent twice or thrice as many hours together with her prepping my computer and me than I will actually be doing Twitch interviews. So bless Evelina's heart. And if she wants me to learn a video game, she now knows how difficult that might be for me to learn. But she's already proven that she is one of the most patient people I know trying to teach me something. So I'm game to try. Yes, it was that long, Ms. Evelina. It was 3 hours and then it was another 2 hours. Bless your heart.
Thank you. Thank you. So I hope I have the right game here. Democracy 3.
Okay.
It simulates the motivations, loyalties, and desires of everyone in the country. It's a custom designed neural network that's used to model individual voters, each with varying memberships of voting groups, political parties, and pressure groups. That sounds up my alley.
I would probably think it wasn't radical enough or not realistic enough about how the government really works.
He would say some shit like that.
You know?
Yes.
And I'd probably decide that really early before I even should decide that, frustrating everyone around me because I'm opinionated very rapidly at times. Right, Bryan?
You opinionated? No, sir. No. Perish the thought. Perish the thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the question, it's always a question, are there people who want to hear us talk more?
Amazingly enough, the chat stream has just really taken off. Well, it really never stopped taking off. It's like it's actually starting to move so fast that I'm well, I can't say I can't keep up, but it's moving. I love it when I'm trying to watch a Bernie Sanders hour-long panel with a bunch of healthcare workers or a bunch of whoever's during his campaign, and the stream is literally going by so fast that you can barely read a single word of all the people who are watching. Wouldn't that be fun if we could get there someday? Carla said, Paul on Democracy 3, next live stream in a personal theater near you.
She gets it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fernanda says, let's move beyond governments. Right on. You know, one of the early reasons that I got so excited about the community rights movement when I was already tiring of single issue anti-corporate activities, which is what I did for a decade or two first, logging, etc., logging issues and others, is that I've identified myself as an anarchist since high school, and I couldn't believe how well the community rights movement fit into my conceptualization of anarchism. The phrase community self-government or self-governance is really common in our movement from some of our main writers and thinkers. And I thought, I'm never going to see a phrase in a social movement specifically around corporate rule that comes closer to my understanding of local community self-governance, i.e. anarchism. That was one of the early reasons I got involved in this movement. And what I find absolutely extraordinary when I go out and lead workshops, which until COVID I was on the road a week or two every month, leading workshops all over the United States for many, many years and absolutely loving it, is that I could do exactly the same workshop in front of a group of rural conservative farmers in Iowa as I could in Minneapolis for a group of liberal activists. I'd virtually not change a single word. I was paying attention very explicitly always to every little bit of framing that I was doing, because framing is absolutely so essential for reaching various demographics. And, you know, I pay a lot of attention to what comes out of my mouth when I'm teaching, which is, you know, both really fun and really exhausting. But here I am, you know, a self-identified radical anarchist leading workshops for Trump supporters in rural communities, being housed by Trump supporters, watching Fox News with them at night, and talking about dismantling corporate rule. And, you know, no one's batting an eyelash or looking uncomfortable. You know, I've also been I've been anti-capitalist, if I'm an anarchist, for my entire adult life. And if you say you're anti-capitalist, you lose half the country immediately or more. But if you say you're against corporate rule or corporations controlling local communities, you hardly lose anybody. And so I've always seen dismantling corporate rule as, again, the right meme, the right phrase for reaching people across the political spectrum. Whereas capitalism is an economic term. It's not a governance term. And I'm really all about governance rather than single issues. Carla says, yes, but you can do whatever you want in the game. You can anarchize it, Paul. She's still on Democracy 3. That's great. And for you in the rights movement. I'm not sure. Farananda asked? Farananda asked, or whoever is Community Rights US is asking. It's not clear. Yeah. I'm not quite understanding the last two comments. But my question, what is the most amazing opportunity for you in the community rights movement? It's addressed to me. I'm not sure if it's from Farananda or someone else. Can't quite figure it out. But what is the most amazing opportunity for you? I don't actually know how to answer. I'm not sure that question is for me. Bryan, why don't you answer that question? What is the most amazing opportunity for you in the community rights movement? I've talked plenty already.
Most interesting opportunity in the community rights movement. I mean, it might sound a little redundant, but what's going on right now with the Charter Commission? There's a lot of different communities all over the country that have a similar process taking place, and connecting with those folks around what the potential for their individual city can be. It definitely gets me out of bed. Yeah, because they've got so much built in already. It's just a matter of sharing with them some interesting ideas, pushing them in this or that direction, and a lot of cross-pollination is taking place. It's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. But also, I mean, there was a time where Community Rights US was a relatively small group of folks who were really dedicated, making stuff happen, and our numbers they just keep expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Our capacity keeps expanding. And we've got folks from the Midwest, from the East Coast, from the South, from the West. I mean, so many different experiences, so many different skills, and it just feels like we're on a really amazing trajectory.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere I look, I benefit from seeing opportunity, right, and seeing a lot, and seeing. So I'm usually in a state of just feeling great.
Yeah, it really feels like we're kind of at a potentially big growth spurt point, kind of an explosive growth spurt point as an organization, which is incredibly exciting. And for me, it's personally also even more exciting because I was burning out on feeling daily responsibility as the director of the organization since its origin 3.5 years ago at this point. Wow, 3.5 years. And we now have a very capable and impressive person who is much younger than me and has a lot more energy than me, who's become our new director, Tyler Norman, who may have gone to bed. I'm not quite sure anymore.
I wouldn't blame him.
But because he's on at 8 tomorrow morning for an hour.
He should be asleep.
But yeah, so we have a new, more energetic director. I'm still on in a significant way, but not with daily responsibilities anymore, which thrills the hell out of me. We continue to bring in new board people. I've been thinking for the last half hour what a great board of directors member Fernanda Ibarra might be. And I think it's time that we added a board member from Hawaii. So I'm waiting in the chat stream for a response right now. And yes, you're allowed to think about it. You don't have to tell me right now. So you're off the hook. But I think you'd make a great board member, Fernanda. Anyway, Tyler went to bed. Yeah, that's good. So, smart man. Is there anything else you want to ask me other than about my beard?
I mean, I want to ask Carla if she can be our go-to "is this thing still cool" person, because I don't know that I can do that anymore. Right, I'm on the verge of being not a young person anymore, according even to the UN, right? And their cutoff was 35. That was it. Of all the organizations globally, they were the loosest with the definition.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah. So how old is she?
I have no idea how old Fernanda is, but she's I'd be very shocked to find out if she was still in the 35 and below category.
What about Carla?
Oh, Carla is right around that cutoff. I forget exactly which side of the cutoff she's at. I'm sure she'll tell us momentarily. And Fernanda, I didn't say you're from Hawaii. You live in Hawaii.
Right.
Or maybe you're about to move back. Go ahead, Bryan.
I asked because I was talking with someone in high school, and I should have known better. I asked them whether or not listening to Led Zeppelin, The Who, Pink Floyd, and such, whether or not that was still a rite of passage. And
would you find out?
I'll put it this way. They were nice enough to tell me that they know that was a thing.
Their parents informed them.
Some way, somehow, they found out that yes, that That was indeed a thing.
Their children informed them.
But no more.
Okay.
No more. Yeah. And so
Carla's 35, so I guess she has days, weeks, or months left to become part of a youth team at the United Nations with her copious spare time.
Or sunrise.
And Fernanda grew up on Pac-Man and was a teen dancing at all of that. So there you go.
That works.
Yeah. But you notice she's not telling us her age.
You know, I don't blame
Yeah.
her. I don't blame her. I'm surprised I told you my age.
Okay.
Yeah. I just know that that's not a thing that is polite to do to people.
Huh.
Right? Yeah, and I'm still, you know, even though one of my very best friends is trans and I was helpful, I did everything that I could to assist them in their transition, research, finding doctors, going to workshops, watching movies and documentaries, going to lectures, side by side doing guided journaling and whatnot, and all sorts of things. Even though I had all that experience for years and years and years, I still have a very hard time no longer saying yes ma'am or yes sir or things like that. And so just trying to show some level of respect or courtesy to another person, particularly someone who's older than me. So yeah.
Yeah, I've had to work really hard at getting you to stop pedestalizing me as an older person in our friendship. But you've been doing a pretty good job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Evelina says when she turned 30, she decided to stay 30. Yeah. When I turned 63, 3 days ago, I decided to stay in my 50s.
Should we all sing you happy birthday?
No one has sung me happy birthday yet. I had a bit of an odd birthday 3 days ago. I woke up in a piece of crap Coleman tent in 28-degree morning weather at mile-high desert elevation in northern Nevada at about 6:30 in the morning when the sun started showing up into my tent. And I opened, or actually it wasn't sun, it was just brightness. And my tent had the oddest fabric discoloration all over it that I could not understand. And so I reached out and touched the places that seemed like they were wet, but I hadn't heard rain at night at all. And it turned out the tent had 4 inches of snow on it. And I was just shocked, and I started to unzip the door, and the snow started sliding here and there around the edges of the tent and making these wonderful noises. And it wasn't until the other new friends that I'd met at the camp, at the action camp, reminded me of this, that the snow had whispered happy birthday to me in its arrival, and that was my birthday present that happened on my birthday. Was 4 inches of snow, came and covered every single square inch of every shape of every grass and every bush and every sagebrush for as far as the eye could see, and every hill and every mountain in all directions were white. You couldn't see the ground at all at 6:45 in the morning when I peered out of my tent. And that was my primary birthday present this year, as it turns out. And by 9 a.m., the strong desert winds had picked up so substantially that there was barely any snow on any blades of grass or any bushes or shrubs. And the ground, and it was starting to melt on the ground. And by the time I left in my little car at around 10 or 11 a.m. and said goodbye to camp for now,
Mm.
The gravel, the dirt road through BLM land down to the highway was free of snow because
Wow.
I guess the ground was warmer than freezing.
Good.
It was quite an amazing morning. Yeah, I was at Thacker Pass, it's called the Protect Thacker Pass camp, at it and near it for 2 full weeks. I just got back home yesterday. It's a 9-hour drive to the southeast from here in northern Nevada. It was an amazing experience. I'd fully intended to be home for my birthday and to have another little drop-in outdoor goddamn COVID party. But there was a very important public meeting happening on the evening of my birthday in Orovada, Nevada, that I could not miss. And so I was there instead on my birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, there were about 15 locals, mostly ranchers, a few corporate CEOs, amusingly, and some local public officials, a couple of people from camp, and myself. Yeah.
I love that story. Very, very illustrative. I feel like you put me there. But you also didn't answer my question. And so, setting myself to the next time that we go out to eat, you will endure the entire restaurant singing you happy birthday.
Huh.
And then if possible, I'll see if I can't also get them to sing When the Cat Came Back. So.
Yeah. Okay. I will defer to you, as I often do. Yeah, that's fine, as long as it happens soon, because we can't celebrate my birthday weeks after it happened. That's just not kosher. Yeah. Oh, but can I tell you one more quick birthday story?
Please.
So I drove to Winnemucca that afternoon and booked a motel room because I'd really had enough of sleeping in an ice cold tent on and off for 2 weeks, and I just didn't think I could take it one more night because I was more of a wimp than I realized in really ice cold situations in the wilderness, which I guess is allowed in my eldering years. And I went to what had become my favorite casino restaurant in Winnemucca. Of course, there's 5 casinos in this town of 7,000 people because it's a Nevada town, of course. And I went to the Model T restaurant yet again for a meal. And because it was my birthday, I ordered filet mignon or prime rib or whatever the hell it was called. I forgot already. For $18.99, which I've never ordered. I've hardly ever ordered steak in my life at a restaurant, but I've certainly never ordered the best cut of steak at a restaurant. But there I was, and so I did it. And what arrived 10 minutes later at this, decent restaurant in a casino, a small town casino, was an enormous slab of what looked like pork. And so I started to cut into it and started to eat it, and it clearly tasted like pork and it looked like pork. And so the waitress, as waitresses do, she came a couple minutes into the meal and said, is everything okay? And I said, it's fine, except this is pork. I ordered beef. I ordered a steak. And she said, no, sir, this is beef. And I said, it's certainly not beef. This is pork. See how pink it is? It's pink all the way through. And she said, you ordered medium rare, and I told you that if it was too pink, we could bring it back, and it could be cooked some more. I said, when you cook beef, it starts red in the center and becomes more and more gray. When you cook pork, it starts pink and it ends pink. She insisted it was a steak. She said, sir, I've worked here 3 years. I serve this dish a lot. I can guarantee you this is beef. So she left. I ate the thing. It was perfectly fine. Um, she came back a while later, and I said, by the way, today is my birthday. Do you do anything special for birthdays here? And she got all excited and she said, oh, would you like a slice of chocolate mousse pie for your birthday? And I said, I would love that. And she brought me a gifted piece of pie for my birthday. and and so I ended up feeling less bad about being ripped off that I never got the steak that I ordered. And I came really close to picking up the plate and walking to the kitchen and saying, excuse me, is this beef or pork? But I didn't want to be an asshole, and so I didn't do that. And I like pork just fine. So that was my birthday dinner. Is this cultural Jew had a very lovely pork dinner at a casino restaurant in Nevada on his birthday, all by himself. The end.
I mean, I love you, Paul, but I keep asking myself, when are you going to stop believing your own lying eyes? Really?
Yeah. Fernanda asks, so if you would do this type of live stream again, what would you change? Right. And then she adds, it's an amazing idea and OBS has so much potential. I've been playing with it. Thank you for the class. Evelina, if I would do this type of live stream, well, it's really actually wonderful that we were able to do this as a late evening thing and that I didn't have to worry about making a fool of myself in front of a small group of people who I already know. And I got such great assistance from all three of my, by the way, I keep mentioning Evelina, but there's 4 of us who are part of this amazing Twitch marathon group, and they're Evelina, Carla, and Tyler, with significant assistance from Michelle, our social media coordinator, who's been blasting social media announcements out every few hours for days. But really, this Twitch marathon would not have happened if it wasn't for Carla and Evelina working many hours every day for weeks, and maybe Tyler too. But Tyler, while I was at a base camp in Nevada, Tyler was at a base camp in northern Minnesota, an anti-pipeline base camp, action camp. And I believe didn't even get to spend anywhere near as much time there as he'd wanted to because of his big responsibility with the Twitch marathon, which was unfortunately timed in that way. But I just want to put a big shout out to Evelina, Carla, Tyler, and Michelle, who did virtually all of the organizing and marketing and technical creation to make this thing possible. And I have absolutely gotten over my terror of doing a live stream, and I've gotten over my fear of doing a live interview with a significant person like Stephen Newcomb, who I interviewed this afternoon, who, by the way, Al Geddix, who's one of my anti-mine heroes who lives in Wisconsin, emailed me this evening and said that was an absolutely terrific interview. So, and I don't think of Al as someone who's easy to please. So that made me feel really good as well. And Stephen was an amazing guest. And I would love to have him on for 2 or 3 hours the next time because and I told him that a couple times during the hour, he's so knowledgeable about the history of domination, of people of color, of nature, etc., by the white quote-unquote race and by the Catholic Church. I mean, he's a native scholar. He's a law professor, scholar in indigenous law and the doctrine of what I used to call the doctrine of discovery, and he's helped me rename it the doctrine of domination, which is what it is, because conquerors don't discover anything. That's the people who are there do not need to be discovered. The natural world does not need to be rediscovered. It already knows it's there. So, yeah.
So yes, I definitely want to thank the team of folks who put this Twitch marathon together. Bravo, bravo! Thank you so much. I had never even been close to even looking up what Twitch was, let alone being on Twitch or utilizing it before we did this thing, and now we're on it because of y'all, and this is great. It's a fantastic experience, and as a team, from what I know, yeah, I mean it's on all cylinders. This is really great. With that, I'm rather surprised in a way, because like you do interviews all the time, you talk to people all the time, you've been recorded.
I'm interviewed all the time. I've almost never interviewed someone else. I've certainly not live in front of an audience online. Yeah, so all of those, it was the online piece that was the really scary. I would be very comfortable, believe it or not, I would have last month been very comfortable interviewing Stephen Newcomb in front of 500 people in an auditorium. It's the tech part that I have big anxiety around. I have very little anxiety in front of a huge crowd. I give speeches in front of large audiences. I have for decades.
Yeah.
Large and small audiences. And, there is that terror that's very brief just before you get up on the stage, that I think most people suffer. But once I'm up there, I'm having a great time.
And so if I'm being honest, that was more or less my experience. Yeah, like I regularly have one-on-one conversations with people, where if we don't go about this thing right, they're going to lose their job, right? Their livelihood, everything that they knew. And talk in front of large groups of workers, it's nothing. But there was honestly something about having no idea who was watching this thing and it being recorded that really made me nervous. I mean, like, this tea is not just like green tea, it's like Tulsa sweet roads. This is what I drink when I've had a long, hard day, or I'm flipping my wig, which is what was happening before getting on here.
Well, we've got our team writing fast and heavy on the side here.
Uh-oh.
I'll get, in addition to being asked, was the chocolate mouse actually chocolate mouse? God, I hope it wasn't a chocolate mouse. But it was a slice of pie, and it was delicious, and it might have been all artificial flavoring, but I sure loved it, and it felt like birthday cake to me. But getting on to the real stuff, yes, now I know the potential, but the problem is that, like I say, so Grand Theft Auto is currently on Twitch with 118,000 people watching, and we have 9, which is actually more than we had when we started. So it'd be interesting who's there, who's not talking to us, because you've got to actually register with Twitch to make comments. So there may be a few people who haven't done that, and I haven't figured out who's on at any given time. But as many people are saying in the comments right now, the issue is how do we, we did a lot of promotion on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch. And so far, we haven't had an audience since noon today of more than 22 people, if I was following. I might have missed a few. And so in terms of a fundraiser, it's not going to be a great use of an enormous amount of hours of our time. I hope that we've reached some new folks. If we end up with a new volunteer or a new board member or someone who wants to work with us in some capacity, it will have been absolutely worth it. But I don't know. Oh, I was wrong. There's no way to promote on Twitch. Okay, I was wrong about that. So clearly we haven't figured out how to reach a bigger audience yet, because using the social media that we did use, we haven't reached that many people, and we've had some really top-notch people. I mean, we had a Mexican indigenous man a couple hours ago who presented a shadow play that was absolutely stunning, and he said afterwards it's the first time the play has ever been performed in the United States. And then he spoke for 45 minutes, and unfortunately I missed a lot of what he said, but it was a really stunning presentation. And we had David Rovics, who's a nationally acclaimed balladeer and singer-songwriter, who performed at I think 2 p.m. this afternoon for like 16 people or 12 people, and these people deserve mass audiences.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure. We have to crack that. But I know that Bryan, Tyler, Evelina, Carla, Michelle, and myself, most of whom are right here together right now, are committed to starting a monthly podcast where we interview people and have all sorts of different kinds of conversations. And this really was, at least for me, I'm past all of my own barriers around jumping in. So I think the time has come for us to launch that, ideally in the next month.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it would be unreasonable for me to talk about the outreach process and whatnot, having not been involved in any kind of way. But I would be interested in looking at the analytics. Does Twitch allow for that?
Hopefully Evelina or Carla will answer that. And while we're waiting, there's a comment. The way is to do a few hours of streaming same time each week, at least. Oh, that's an interesting point. Fernanda asks, what are you aiming towards in regards to fundraising? I don't know whether our team ever made a decision about a fundraising goal. I think I heard the figure $800 secondhand from Evelina at one point. That's an awfully small amount of money for 24 hours of live stream and probably hundreds of hours between the five of us of collective work to get ready. So yeah, I don't know about that. There's another comment. I did reach out to a couple of local radio stations and a place that lists events, but I did that a week before the event. It needs to be done 3 weeks before, so that's something we can do next time. Fernanda says, social media sucks to promote organically if you don't already have a community. We do have a community rights community. And in addition, we sent out 2 newsletters a few days apart to our 3,000 subscribers, who are almost every single one of them has been to one of my workshops or one of my talks or has some connection with one of us directly through this movement. So I figured that would actually be our most effective outreach. Yeah, emails to 3,000 people twice for our newsletter. I reached out to all of the community rights people around the United States who I have not lost contact with, which is about 200 people. I wrote them twice in the last week with the full schedule in an email. So I'm just not sure. We'll obviously have to give some thought to marketing. Yeah, it's a conversation that's needed.
Yeah,
I'm absolutely glad we did it and are doing it.
Right.
It's a hell of a lot of work.
I'm utterly shocked at all the skill, to see all the skill that was put towards this. And it just really is impressive to me the group of folks that were willing to come together to make this happen. And yeah, my hat's off to you. Thank you very much for doing this. You know, we're sort of just talking about it. It's not even over with just yet.
Yeah, it's half
Chris,
over. Yeah.
You know, best practices, looking into it more. But I mean, you know, this is our first go around with it, right?
Yep.
Especially as a team, right? I'm on Twitch right now. I still don't even know what it really is, right? But you know, the more that we practice, the easier it's going to get, right? And I would be interested in talking with like what other folks who do that kind of podcasting or do these kinds of interviews, what they might recommend and whatnot to help make the best use of their time and make sure that they get what they need from this as they work with us. But yeah, I mean, we're going to figure it out. I have no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, and you worked so many hours today, you didn't even get a chance to go onto Twitch even for 15 minutes and watch anybody.
So I did go in and out, and I saw a number of musicians, and I was actually pretty impressed with the with what it was. I mean, there was one gentleman. It was him and his guitar, and his daughter came in at one point, and it was cute. It was really.
That was Tommy Shreds of Random Avenue Punk Rock. Yeah, I saw that. It was cute.
It was good stuff. It's good stuff.
He's here in Portland.
Yeah, we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah,
right. No doubt.
Yeah, as Carla says, this is great practice with a safe audience. So I think it's good that we did it. Paul and Bryan entered the live stream domain for the first time. Great job. Yeah, and I will be doing my second ever. I'm not calling this an interview with you, Bryan. It was more of a conversation, but I'll be doing my second ever formal interview online, live tomorrow at noon, from noon to 1 Pacific time tomorrow. I'll be interviewing Will Falk, who is one of the two giant figures who conceptualized and created the Protect Thacker Pass camp in northern Nevada in the high desert, and who has been living and sleeping out of his car in the high desert now for 4 full months, with Max Wilbert, who's a colleague of Derek Jensen's and co-author with Derek Jensen. And Will Falk is an accomplished writer and filmmaker and campaigner who has done civil disobedience in a lot of places that big actions are taking place. He was most recently on, is it Mauna Lea? Mauna Lea? I think it's Mauna Lea on the big island of Hawaii, the big battle to stop the sacred area from having yet another observatory plopped on top of it in violation of the Hawaiian native sovereigntist movement's demands. And they've held it off so far. He was there just very recently. But Will's going to talk all about the campaign to stop the Thacker Pass lithium mine from noon to 1 tomorrow. I'll be interviewing him. And I've just spent a week camping next to him at the mine, at the proposed mine site. So that should be very interesting. He's a very impressive person. So hopefully everyone who's listening now will listen from noon to 1 tomorrow.
Remind me when it is that you're hoping to take a bunch of people down to the camp.
I don't yet know that. Will is convinced that civil disobedience, the beginning of large-scale civil disobedience, may be needed by May or June. I think he's being overly pessimistic. My reading from just listening to and witnessing all of the things that the government or the corporation still has to do to jump over the official hurdles without totally infuriating the locals. Their plan is to do it no matter what the locals want, but their plan is not to infuriate the locals more than necessary And so they're not going to start construction before the permits are completed and approved,
Nice.
before the public hearings have happened and the fake regulatory agency has, reviewed the 95% of people who say they don't want it before they rubber stamp it. The company would just be dumb if they were to move before that happens, because they have to be shown to be, quote, good corporate citizens, unquote. One of my least favorite phrases.
Right, because
and so for all of
it's
that to happen,
forgivable.
it's probably not till September. I don't think construction can start till September. Oh, and one of the absolutely very earliest thing that has to happen, I thought was going to be some road building that had to happen before they could start the mine. But before the road building can even happen, at least the formalized road building, they've already put in a patchwork of informal dirt roads. They've cut up the sagebrush wilderness pretty badly with these tiny little dirt roads already. But the very first thing they have to do, you're all going to love this, whoever's still on the call, all 5 of you, is they have to bring in a backhoe and dig up native bodies that are buried all over the landscape from a long, long, long time ago. And they have hired archaeologists who seem to know where the bodies are, which is interesting because the tribal council says they don't really know exactly where the bodies are. I was present when a whole group of hereditary elders met and did ceremony and talked with us at camp just last Saturday and Sunday, and they don't know where the bodies are. But this is BLM, Bureau of Land Management, official land. It's really native land, but it's formerly BLM land, and BLM requires that the bodies be removed respectfully and handed to the tribe before any formal digging can start. And the native people are not being told where any of these bodies are, and so you're going to have this absolutely obscene and surreal situation where one day, but probably not till August or September, they're going to arrive with backhoes in this sagebrush wilderness and start digging holes in the ground, but no one's really sure that anyone knows where the bodies are. I mean, is this grotesque or what? This is, God bless America. And yeah, that's actually the first thing that has to happen. Yeah. Sorry to drop this on all of you at the very end of our conversation, but yeah, this is the very first thing that has to happen in terms of destruction. And so we only talked about it at camp for the first time when the Paiute and Shoshone people came to the camp and spent most of 2 full days with us on the site last weekend. And 2 of the elder women who understand are both hereditary elders, formal hereditary leaders, both said they were prepared to die to stop the mine from being built. And I can't imagine disbelieving them when they said that. And we said, or I said, I would happily come down and do civil disobedience to stop a bulldozer from digging up a native body. But there may, it's a 9-hour drive away. So I may not get the chance to do that. It may all happen very quickly. The company and the BLM, of course, know that this is an incredibly sensitive topic. And so they're going to want to do it with no notice, if possible, and just have it all taken care of very quickly. And some people on the call may be wondering, it's legal for you to dig up historical graves of Native people? And the answer I discovered this week is yes, it's entirely legal because it's not officially native land. The government could not do that on Indian reservation land, but this is federal land. It's BLM land, and so the requirement is that the tribe be consulted, quote unquote, which they are already doing. The tribal council has given its assent. because the tribal council is like most tribal councils. They're corporatists who, some of them have been bought off, and they don't represent their grassroots, just like white people government. And so, yeah, they just have to be consulted, and there has to be some written agreement, and all of that's going to happen very handily with the tribal council. And the BLM doesn't have to talk to the hereditaries or the community, and obviously they won't. I mean, the tribal councils, for people who don't realize this already, tribal councils as a structure of governance in Native nations exist only because the white conqueror culture needed a structure of law to negotiate with so that we could steal their land legally under our laws. The hereditaries never would have agreed to any of this historically. So we have tribal councils for every Native nation so that the white government has a party they can negotiate with and get everything they want 100% of the time. And if it requires payoff, so be it. Yeah, so I don't know. It's very unclear. I mean, I'd love to be able to say to Will and Max, you know, we have a carload of people who are prepared to get arrested. But it would be good once the weather is not so insanely cold there, which, you know, in just a few more weeks it won't be. It'd be great to have a carload of people that just go down and camp for 2 or 3 or 4 nights, just so we can build the community of people from our region. You know, and each one of us who goes down, you know, will be very moved and we'll go home and talk it up. And that's how this thing is going to build.
Right.
Sorry, that was a long monologue, but that's what's going on.
That was, I don't know why it felt like a monologue. It was fantastic. My wheels are spinning.
Yeah.
My gears are turning. And I'm thinking of a few different groups that we could reach out to recruit some people to head on down, to observe or whatever else they might have interest in doing.
Good. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll need to start setting that up pretty quickly, especially if we're going to have little or no notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, you know, we don't need notice to get a carload of people. I mean, it's a 9-hour drive, so yeah.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when we're not being recorded and such and such.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it'd be great if sometime in May, you know, at least 3 of us could get in the same car and go down there for a few days. And I've got plenty of work that I'm still trying to do. You know, I think some of you have already heard from me that it appears that the main work that I'm going to be responsible for, if I'm agreeing to take it on, is to try to organize and mobilize a virtually unorganizable community of white ranchers who are too scared shitless to even stand up and publicly say they're opposed to the mine. Yeah, which is something I'm feeling heartbreak about, because the Native people are mobilizing themselves really effectively, and the white people are AWOL so far.
Yeah.
Which is not unusual.
It's not, but yeah, I would love to talk with you about language and framing and and how to put the question to folks around what do they want for their community, what do they want to allow for their community, do they want to still have a community, or are they going to let this multinational, which is primarily a Canadian company, come in and poison the land, poison the water, make this place unlivable, and make them have to move their entire worlds?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm very excited to talk with you about that.
Yeah, and we started a long conversation. God, I hope it wasn't just last night, but it might have been. It was either last night or the night before, as I was driving home. And
one of 4 different conversations we've had was last night. Yes.
oh boy, yeah, we talk a lot to each other. Yeah, and just for those of you who are interested or still on the call, I did reach out by email to the one rancher who I think still is a possible colleague in a more provocative no mine campaign in the white community. I emailed him like 3 or 4 hours ago. I don't have his phone number, although I could get it. I'll give him a day or two to respond. But I'm just crossing my fingers that he's interested. If he's interested, then we can probably have a breakthrough very quickly because he knows everybody in the valley. He's been there a long time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean,
it just takes a couple people. If we can get 2 or 3 people who are willing to be named, then we can quickly launch a no mine group in the ranch community. And I think if 2 or 3 named people are brave enough to put their names on initial ads, initial marketing stuff, other people will very quickly join. And I think that's a realistic assumption. And I think that even the existing group that has already surrendered before anyone asked them to, there may be some split-offs from that group into this other body, or that group might finally find its testicles. So yeah,
or guts, or nerve,
whatever. So I'm still hopeful. And as some of you who have known me for a long time, this is the stuff that I like doing more than anything else in the world. It's these on what seemingly unwinnable challenges in rural conservative places. Love it. So this New York Jew loves those challenges.
Is that only the second time that you reference being a New York Jew in this conversation?
Have I said that already tonight? Wow.
Usually, especially if we're talking for 2 hours,
okay.
It would have been 8, 9, 10 times already. That's only been twice.
Oh my God. Carla says this is one of my favorite sessions. And she's been listening for 12 hours, and she just said that. I think people out there will enjoy this type of natural conversation. Maybe Evelina could give her advice on that idea later. And Evelina said, same here, she agrees.
Aww.
So thank you, dear friends, Evelina and Carla. Carla says, it is my favorite session. She just reiterated again.
Wow.
So I warned the whole team that I was so exhausted that we would not be going more than an hour tonight. And I guess that's just my latest lie. So
another fine example of conversations around language that Paul and I have. He says that's a lie. I would say, no, it's not. You were mistaken. You were it's not a lie. You weren't intending to deceive or anything. My God.
No, but I knew also that I was going to really enjoy spending time talking to you, because we always do enjoy that, and we usually go for hours if one of us has to stop doesn't have to stop prematurely. So I can't be surprised, and therefore, yes, I was lying to myself.
Right.
Yeah, and therefore the others as well.
What's really missing here is some pho or something.
Yeah, can you make some pho transition transmogrify into zeros and ones and just kind of force it through the whatever channels the zeros and ones travel through between you and me?
I'm gonna get right on that.
I mean, we're both in Portland, so it's not as complicated as going via satellite, probably.
That's a good point.
The pho can just travel, 3 or 4 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's transmogrifying it into zeros and ones on one end and then back out into food on the other is what is really tricky.
Is right.
Yeah, but I'll bet you
Right.
Elon Musk is currently working on that, and so yeah, it won't be too long now.
That guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you were trying to wrap up, and I totally derailed you, per usual. You're a great person, and all the people listening are fantastic
Bryan
people.
always talks like this at the very end. You should all know. This is how he ends every conversation. Go ahead, I interrupted.
I don't know if that's true. um, thank you so much for giving us your time. If you feel so inclined, thank you so much for giving our organization and our cause some money. And we're going to see you tomorrow.
Very good. Yeah, and maybe Evelina or Carla can tell us who the mystery, like 2 or 3 or 4 people are of the 6 who are currently listening. But maybe that 6 includes you and me, Bryan. And if it also includes Evelina and Carla, that's 4.
Right there.
And
yeah.
so Carla says she has no idea. So there could be as few as 2 and as many as 4 mystery people listening to us making fools of ourselves at this late hour. But just getting back to a little formality before we close, I'm Paul Cienfuegos, founding director of Community Rights US, which was started in the fall of 2017 and is growing in some really beautiful ways. And I've been talking for the last 2 hours with the president of the board of Community Rights US and my dear friend also here in Portland, Bryan Lewis, who I thank very much for hanging out with me for these 2 hours. And I again want to thank Carla and Evelina for hanging in there so incredibly long after you have been working for literally 12 hours, each of you, taking turns doing tech and dealing with problems that arise. There have been some problems that have come up that I just got to sit here and go, okay, I'm sure somebody's working on this. Yeah, so thank you, Carla and Evelina, from the bottom of our 2 beating hearts. And as I believe, I don't know, there seems to be a third person from our organization. I don't know who Community Rights US is. And they're not telling, but they're telling me that the stream starts live again at 3 a.m., which is in less than 3 hours. At 3 a.m. Is Reswitch, a talk about Beltane, the human spirit, workers' rights, and everything in between. It's officially titled Endurance, Magic, and Mentality, from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. I sure hope Reswitch is either on the East Coast or in Europe, because otherwise they're not going to get much sleep tonight. We did have somebody calling in from Finland. Someone called in from Scandinavian country, I forget which one, for David Rovick's performance, which he was thrilled about. So, yeah. Anyway, Community Rights US mystery person. Maybe it's a corporate person who's been spying on us for 12 hours, says, well, technically I am all the people. And Evelina responds, oh, wow. So it's very unclear who is there at this point in our staff. But if the corporate CEO of Lithium Nevada is one of the 6 people, you've been warned. We are coming after you in completely legal but very painful ways.
And by painful, he means, hugs.
No, I mean completely legal harassment in various ways in a corporate campaign, which we hope will start soon. And yeah, and we love you all. And Bryan is mad at me for saying that. And,
no, I'm not mad. I'm concerned. I'm not mad.
We made Carla and Evelina laugh again, which is good. And I think that's a good place to close. So thank you, Bryan Lewis. Thank you, Carla, Evelina. corporate person titled Community Rights US, whoever you are, and 2 to 4 other people, whoever you are, who've stuck with us this long into the night. It's been a pleasure. And I'm going to click the we're taking a break screen, and then I am going to stop streaming. Good night, Bryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It's a
Bye-bye.
pleasure as always.
Bye-bye.